It's a nice in-between. We need a change in BC, and this is our chance to have a change. The Citizen Assembly also recommended that we vote again to see if we want to go back to first past the post or remain with STV after 3 terms. It's probably not perfect. Everybody probably has an idea on how to make it better, a little bit like when we watch a hockey game. You know, we know what they should be doing. But let's just give it a chance. Be courageous and go towards change, and we will be able to tweak it if it needs tweaking. It's called BC STV because it's been made for us.
I am in favor of the STV. The present system, the 2 parties are not, it's not working for the people of British Columbia. A lot of people are alienated. In the last provincial election, I think it was 85% of the people voted for either the New Democrats or for the Liberals, and a lot of them voted because it was lesser of the 2 evils. But there was 15% of the population that was not represented in the vote. So STV, if a party would get 10% of the votes, generally they're going to get 10% of the seats. So it's a more fair system, and also it's going to hold government more accountable. With the 2 parties, and they're quite similar, the NDP and the Liberals, in power in the legislature, a 3rd party, a 4th party, or even a 5th party, there'll be more eyes on the books. Government will be more accountable. There'll be less control at the top. The Premier will have less power. Right now the Premier's got too much power. So I'm definitely supporting the STV.
Thank you. The NDP is not taking an official position one way or the other because everyone's going to have to make up their own minds. Within the NDP itself, I think there are people for first past the post and there are many people for STV. It's something that we're all going to have to wrestle with individually. I think we should all go on our Elections BC websites and the STV website and the first past the post website and make the very best decision that we can. And at the end of the day, the referendum, the NDP will take their direction from the results of the referendum. Personally, I sort of like mixed proportional representation, but that's not on the ballot, I'm afraid. So we'll just have to work it out together and see where we come out at the end.
Thank you. And I'm going to squeeze in this young lady who's been waiting patiently.
Okay. How are your parties expecting to pay for the promises made in your campaign? For example, quote, "We, the NDP, have put forward a fully costed plan that will spur job creation and return BC to a balanced budget in 4 years." Could you describe how you're going to pay for this?
I've been given a high sign that people over there could not hear you, so I'm going to try and repeat your question. You were asking for each of the candidates to discuss how they would pay for the promises they've made in their platforms. Okay, and I'm going to start this time with Michelle.
I think I've answered your question a little bit throughout all the other questions. The plan for green economy is about shifting the revenue, but we're looking at trying to stay around the same numbers for revenue. It's about looking at things differently, but staying within the same kind of budgets to start with. Or how can I say it? We haven't made promises that are so much about numbers, but about a shift of way of thinking. As for carbon tax and cap and trade, I think for that we've been clear that it's about tax shifting and that it's revenue neutral for the government.
A reform will introduce an online balance sheet as one set of books to allow citizens to follow taxation, borrowing, and spending through the BC Office of the Premier. Reform will, in fact, invoke the international odious debt to repudiate debts incurred without the knowledge or consent of the public that can be shown not to be in the public interest. We have a situation, for example, with the Fortress, who had offered to loan Vancouver $800 million, and reneged because after the first $100 million, they reneged, and the province had to come back and bail out the Vancouver. The people, for example, who organized the loan didn't like the reneging and decided that because the contract was made anyway, that even if Fortress had pulled out, that they still would be entitled to the Olympic Village, and and this is where we have stepped in and saying, excuse me, but once you've reneged and you can't pay, you can't end up with something that you didn't fully pay for.
Yes, the NDP has committed to a fully costed budget and a balanced budget in 4 years, and that means that investments will be made in health, education, affordable housing, all these issues that we talked about tonight. If you consider what most governments are doing around the world, given the economic situation, they are borrowing more money, and it is a way to stimulate the economy. All the investments that the NDP are committed to represent jobs. And if you put the Liberals have actually talked about putting a hard cap on the deficit, and then I would throw the question back to them, and that is, well, what programs are you going to cut? And what part of BC are you going to sell off next? So governments have the opportunity to borrow money, they also have the opportunity to pay it back. And it's how you prioritize your investments, and the NDP has made a pretty clear platform in terms of where they feel that the investments should best be made.
Yeah, the BC Conservatives can pay for all their promises by having government spend the money more responsibly. For example, the BC government is giving $250 million every year to the banks. We believe in free enterprise. We don't believe that anybody should get a handout. The oil companies get $200 million per year by the provincial governments. Again, why should they get a handout when small businesses along Lonsdale and Marine Drive don't get any subsidies? Pork barrel spending. The government has all these wacky pork barrel spending projects, the Olympics, the RAV line, the Convention Center, supported by the NDP, supported by the Liberals. We can shift that money for our campaign promises.